What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. Here to with me, as always, it's Brian, Greasy Rules 14. What's up, Brian?
What's going on, Kyle? I don't know about you, but those last 10 laps of the Daytona race on Saturday were some of the most exhilarating and exciting TV I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was truly a wild finish, and the overtime was fun. It's really interesting to see kind of these guys in different environments, and this is really obviously a track where they were racing and they were, letting it open, and some of the guys were making big mistakes and causing huge wrecks, and other guys were, the benefactors of it. Shouts to John Hunter Nemechek for finishing where he did, I believe, inside the top 10. Won a little group wager for me, so that was very nice. Ryan Newman was doing great until he wasn't doing great, so that was fun too. So you get it, the gambling gods giveth, and the gambling gods also taketh away.
Jimmy Johnson was running inside the top 10 all day, near the top 5, and then gets caught up in one of those crashes.
That's why it's hard betting this sport, because that can happen. You can have 90% day where you're just awesome and everything's cruising, and then the last 10 laps, it just not so much. But we are here to talk the Cookout Southern 500. We are at Darlington this week, a track that we have seen 2 times already this year. This is the third trip to this track. They did a Wednesday Sunday race back in May when they were making up races. Your winners were Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. And as we talk about our favorite options inside 10-1, I don't think it's a coincidence that these two guys are both 3-1 to win the race. If you have to look inside that 10-1, obviously we have these two guys in Truex, and then, Chase Elliott, who's sitting on the pole, who at 10-1, if you're, kind of looking at, these guys are 3 and, provide options. But if you're looking like at the very top, is it Hamlin? Is it Harvick? Are you potentially interested in both?
I hate doing this, but yeah, I was really only looking at these two guys, as both of them are really good at this track. And for me, I'm leaning more with Kevin Harvick. Just looking at what he's done this season since a two race blip when he finished 15th and 26th at Martinsville and Homestead respectively. Kevin Harvick has finished in the top 10 in all 12 races, excluding the 2 at Daytona, which are the most volatile races that there is.
Yeah.
11 of those 12 races were top 5 finishes, and 5 of those races were victories.
Yeah.
Now, if we're looking at this track in Darlington, he has 9 consecutive top 10 finishes here. 8 of those are top 5s, 4 top 3s, and he has a victory this season.
Yeah.
So,
and the one that he didn't win this season, he got second. So he's obviously, in terms of form, in terms of results at this track, in terms of, everything, like, it's not fun to bet 3-1 on a race like this,
especially on a winner.
Right. But at the same time, if I told you in the NBA or basketball or like hockey or football, here's a team that I think can win 3-1, you're betting it all day because that's great odds. So it really is a little interesting. Obviously, yeah, there are more options, more potential. It's not a one-on-one. But in NASCAR, especially this season, the way it's been going, betting at the top of the board has really been a good way in terms of outrights to find winners. And it sucks to be at 3-1, but at the same time, I would love to put in some money and get 3 times that back. Like that would be very nice.
Yeah, just like you said, in any other sport, in a 1v1 situation, a 3-1 payout is fantastic, and that just goes to show how much better Harvick and Hamlin have been over the duration of this season than the rest of the drivers.
Yep. I am on board. If we go a little deeper, like, which, we love to do, we like to look at top 5s, all that good stuff. But a guy that I'm looking at this week is Kyle Busch. And I don't like Kyle Busch. Like, he's not a guy that I want to root for. But in terms of a price, like I'm very excited. Obviously, on the which one was this? This is I'm looking at. So this is just Darlington over the last 5 races. He's got an eighth. His average finish is eighth. That was a hard sentence. He has 3 top 5s. He has 4 top 10s. If you look at his recent, like he on the Wednesday race, he got second. On the Sunday race, it was not quite as good. He was down at he was down at 26, but I'm not sure what happened there. This week he is starting at 15th, so I don't love that, but I feel like he can definitely make that up pretty easily and be in the conversation. Chase Elliott's on the pole. Like they're basically the same price. If you had to pick one, which way would you lean? Would you go with, Chase Elliott, who doesn't have quite as good a history, but also finished fourth in that Sunday race, and has been like he was really good to start and kind of fallen off, but you're looking at 2 guys, one starting at the front, one guy starting in the middle, basically the same price. Where's your head at if you had to pick one of those?
Normally I'm not going to go for the guy that's kind of in the back of the pack, which would be Kyle Busch. And to that, I'm going to stick to it. And I would probably go with Elliott in this situation based on the fact that this is the first race of the playoffs. Elliott has some ground to make up behind Harvick and Hamlin. And whereas Kyle Busch, I mean, he's been struggling coming into these playoffs. And I mean, he had another race last week at Daytona where it just bad luck, got caught up in a crash, and he DNF'd. So, as far as like what they've been doing recently, I like Elliott, even though he's been struggling a little bit, but starting at the pole, I think that kind of gives him the benefit of kind of running in the front of the pack early on.
Yeah, and I wonder how aggressive some of these guys get, especially the ones that are kind of on the cusp. Obviously, we have Darlington, and then Richmond, and then Bristol. So that's the first trio of races, and then we go Vegas, Talladega, Charlotte, and then we go Kansas, Texas, Martinsville, and then we have the final 4 in Phoenix. So it'll all dwindle down, but I am curious to kind of keep an eye on it as we roll along to see some of the guys that are fighting with that cut line. Are they going to be a little more aggressive? And then maybe, in terms of if we're looking at groups or if we're looking at matchups, if we know a guy who's comfortably inside the results versus a guy who could pop or wreck out, we'll see. But I think we could find some guys that we like a little bit lower, take them against some of the other guys, hope they get a little too aggressive for their own good, end up finishing towards the back, and then we cash some tickets. So I'm going to keep an eye on that as the playoffs kind of roll along and see if there's an opportunity there. But I like Kyle Busch this week, and not something I typically say. So that says a lot about him. Let's go a little lower. A guy that we've been a big fan of on this pod. Obviously, we faded him a little bit more recently. But we're going to get back on the bandwagon, and it's the Erik Jones bandwagon at 20-1 this week.
Yeah, he's another guy who he's not racing for playoff standings or a chance to win a championship, but this dude is racing for a contract just to be able to race next season. So I think that's even more important than what these other drivers are racing for, in that he doesn't even have a ride. So sometimes you might see some guys kind of fade during these playoffs because, they're just kind of preparing for the next upcoming year. They don't want to take any risks, take any chances. Whereas Erik Jones, he's driving for everything right now. And we saw that Saturday at Daytona, where he was driving extremely aggressively. He had moved up all the way into the top 5. And then just like Kyle Busch, just like Jimmy Johnson, he got caught up in one of those crazy Daytona big ones, and he didn't even finish the race. And this is a guy who he's been struggling this season. He's last 2 races he's finished worse than 20th. But looking at this Darlington track, he has 5 consecutive top 10s. This year he's finished 8th and 5th.
Yep.
I mean, he's not starting in a great position. He's starting in the 15th row. He's starting 30th. But if we're looking at daily, I think he's a great pick there as somebody who's going to move up a ton of spots. And if you look at the odds too, at 20-1 for a guy that's starting so far back in the pack, he's right up with the Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney's, Brad Keselowski areas. He's so, even the experts who we do not claim to be think very highly of Erik Jones coming into this race. And it's the reason why I like him at that 20-1.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a top 5 on him at plus 275. I think that's a very good way to go. But yeah, I don't mind taking a shot on him at 21 because, as you mentioned, this is a guy that has done well on this track. Obviously, he hasn't done well of late, but a little comfort. Hey, I was here earlier this year. I did really well in both those races. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go earn myself a ride for 2021. Let's make it happen. So yeah, I'm all on board with Erik Jones. And then we're gonna go way down the board, Brian, for a guy that we've kind of popped up on here every so often, but Austin Dillon, he's way down there, 80-1. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, Austin Dillon, I was looking at just some of the odds here, and it kind of surprised me that Dillon, who is in the playoffs, he's ranked 10th right now. He's coming off of, okay performances his last couple of races, but he's on one of those good, bad streaks that I like to take advantage of where he's been doing good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. He's coming off of a bad finish at Daytona with a 26th place finish, I believe, and he's due to have a good race. In his 8 career races here at Darlington, he's ran near the top 10. So, I like him to be near that range. And, I'm not necessarily going to be wagering him to win this race, but for somebody who's in the playoffs and he has to maintain his standing to prevent himself from being cut as they get further along throughout these playoffs, I like him to kind of, sneak into that top 10 range. And I think a top 10 finish for him is great value at 2-1 right now for a guy who I just don't understand the value there. I was looking at the value, and he's behind both Matt DiBenedetto and Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick's a rookie who, although he has success there, he's a rookie. Austin Dillon is, it's his second or third year in the Cup Series, and it's a big jump in value and in odds from 50-1 to 80-1 between those guys. So I'm going to go with the higher odds and get the better payout.
Yeah, he is one of those high variance drivers. Like, he is a guy that can either top 5 or like just be out of it. Like, there's not a whole lot of in between. So I like taking shots on guys like that I think can make some serious noise. Before we drop our best bets, I guess I can get rid of that. I want to talk about Alex Bowman for a second, because I'm just looking at the numbers for the weekend. 28-1 plus 650 for a top 3. If I look at a top 5, we're looking at 3.5-1. A guy that, is in the playoffs trying to secure his seat. Obviously, over the last 6 races hasn't been great, but is a guy that performed well at this track earlier this year. That Sunday race was really good to him. He ended up finishing, where is it? I just had it up. Second in that race on Sunday. So it just looks interesting to me as a guy that I think is trying to assert himself. Like, we were kind of expecting him to be a guy that wants to elevate into that kind of upper echelon with the Chase Elliott's and with the Kevin Harvick's, and he kind of hasn't really done that. He's kind of floundered in that middle range. So this is a good opportunity for him to keep impressing, to keep pushing, and to earn his spot. So that number just popped out to me. But before
I think that's a good call, especially he's coming off of 2 consecutive races at 5th and the 7th place finish. So he's running really hot heading into the playoffs.
Yep. Trending in the right direction, a track where he's had recent success. That is something that garners my interest, and something I will look to take advantage of as we head into Sunday. So for your best bet for the Cookout Southern 500, where are you going?
Oh man, I think it's got to be Austin Dillon top 10 plus 215. Yeah, I'm going for it.
I like it. Austin Dillon, up or down. There's no in between. I like that call. I don't want to do this, but Kevin Harvick at 3-1 to win this race. That's where my money's going this week. That's where my best bet is.
You've had luck picking winners before, so
he's running really well. He's got a great track record at this track. Everything is pointing his way. I feel like if we're looking at like in terms of odds to win the whole thing, like I think he's got to be, if he's not the favorite, he's right there. So I think it's Kevin Harvick's season, and everyone else is just along for the ride. And I think he's gonna do well. So I'm on board. As always, let us know down in the comments who you like for the Cookout Southern 500, whether it's a winner, whether it's top 5, top 10, whether you find a matchup. We're always looking for opinions, and if you give us some winners, we'll shout you out on next week's episode. Brian, enjoy the NASCAR playoffs. Enjoy the NBA, NHL, MLB. Football's on the horizon. If you play fantasy, go check out our other fantasy football content. But for Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.